Hello, everyone. We are back as the Believe in Brits podcast for year 3, going through our pre-season predictions for 2024. It's Josh Henwood, Sean Blundell, and Owain Jones, and we are the Believe in Brits podcast. Yes, apologies to anyone that was able to catch us out. Just we had a bit of a false start. Turns out that if you have the YouTube stream on whilst you're recording, you're going to hear yourself and you're going to spook yourself out. So yeah, a little bit of a false start there. Something which the Browns are quite used to in pre-season, of which we'll get onto a couple of those over the course of the next 60 minutes or so. Thank you very much to everyone that is joining us for this. We're really happy to be talking ball once again. It's been, what has it been, chaps? It's probably been a good 6-7 months since we've done this. So little rusty out the gates. That's all me. These two look primed and ready to go. Chaps, how's your summers been? How have you been able to handle the off season? Usually we're chomping at the bit. This season I'm feeling a bit more mellow going into the year. I think with everything that's been going on over the summer, it's been a bit easier. What do you think, Sean?
Yeah, plenty of sport to offer distraction this year, hasn't there been? With the Euros, with the Olympics. No, it's not everybody's cup of tea, but it's certainly kept me entertained over the last sort of 7 or 8 weeks, mate. So, like you say, it's a bit strange, really. Only sort of really getting back into football mode in the middle of August, but always good to have it back, mate. The pre-season excitement is kicking in, and bring on week 1. Looking forward to.
Absolutely. I mean, the guy that's been keeping me well informed of all things Browns, to be honest with you, over the last 4 to 16 weeks, shall we say, is the man to my right currently, Mr. Owain Jones. He's been very much on the pulse of it over the course of all the wheelings, dealings, training camps, all the things that have been said in and out. So you've been a bit more on it, especially compared to myself. I can't speak for Sean because I think that he's probably been a bit more in depth with some of the interviews and that as well, Owain. But how have you been coping?
Yeah, I think like you both, I think I've been actually a little bit more checked out this off season than usual. Obviously, a lot of life stuff going on for me, and as well as the Euros as well, kept me busy, kept me worrying right until second half of the last game, which wasn't particularly fun. So yeah, a lot of sport going on, and like you said, it's been a little bit harder to keep up with the NFL news this year. But yeah, now we're starting to get into it a little bit more.
So, in fact, just because we are a little bit of a community here on the Believe in Brits podcast, and there's quite a few people that keep up to date with Owain's double life as a professional football player over in Wales. Tell us who are we rooting for now, Owain? Because obviously you've moved to a new club. You're no longer with Pontypridd. You've moved on since, and I'm kind of adding some filler here as you move into another room and you get yourself off mute. But who is it that we are rooting for now?
Yeah, so sorry about that. I was very conscious that my washing machine started just as I started talking the first time.
I'm going to have to rename this just the Bear With Us podcast as we get ourselves very much through training camp.
Yeah, so Haverfordwest County, the new club this year. Same league as what we were in last year, but yeah, playing under a manager that I played under before, and I just want to try and have one crack at Europe before I retire. So I think this gives me the best chance that I've had since being in the Welsh Prem. So yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Ace. I mean, that would be that would be quite the adventure. I'm pretty sure that Spence would be the first person on in the stands if that was the case. He's already sent us a message, bless him, saying that he missed us. We missed you, mate. We missed you over the course of the off season as well. Absolutely, but we're glad to be giving you everything that you need in terms of in terms of Browns news. I tell you what, let's crack into it, shall we, guys? So, quite a bit's been going on in Browns land. I mean, a lot's been going on in Cleveland, even. The Guardians, for example, for anyone that follows the baseball. I know that Sean's going to immediately give me a look of disgust, but hey, you watch the cricket, it's practically the same thing, just a different country. They've currently got the best record in all of MLB at the moment, so it's been incredibly fun watching those night after night. But in terms of Cleveland, a couple of bits of good news and a couple of bits of bad news. The good news first is that despite all the humming and hawing of whether or not there's been concerns about his ability to actually start games and all the rest, it looks like Deshaun Watson will start in the final preseason game against Seattle. So that's not the one this weekend, that's the one next weekend. It's the 3 a.m. start for anyone that was planning on staying up for that one. Don't necessarily advise. Gaming 40 exists on DAZN. So that's one bit of news. There's a couple of bad bits of news, one of which came out of the preseason game against the Packers. Luke Weipler, who was our backup center, is out for the season with a broken ankle. It looked quite bad on the tape, and then it was pretty much confirmed as soon as they got off the field that he was going to miss considerable time. It turns out it's a broken ankle. He'll be out for the year. The one bit of almost like tragic irony is the fact that we got Nick Harris back by doing a pick swap, late round pick swap with the Seattle Seahawks. So we got Nick Harris back there. And then some breaking news this morning, of which is that Mike Hall was our second round draft pick, if I've got that right, chaps. So yeah, little nod there. Is to be arrested, I believe, is the official thing. There's an arrest warrant due to a domestic disturbance where the details basically include the fact that it's alleged, and we have to say it's alleged at this point, that he put a gun to his partner's head, essentially, as part of this disturbance. We imagine, don't think anything's come up at this point, but you have to assume that with what's gone before, you imagine that he won't have any role with the Browns organization going forward. If this is proven in any way to be legitimate. So it might well be that our second round draft pick, who had he had comparisons to Aaron Donald coming out of training camp. There were people within the organization that were hyping him up that much. He looked really good actually against the Packers. You could see him explode off the line and all the rest of it, but it looks like personal issues, for lack of a more loaded term, is likely to see that talent go to waste there. So those are the bits. I mean, did either of you two catch the Packers game, for example, or the highlights or anything like that? Because I can, if not, I can whiz through the general highlights in a matter of minutes.
Yeah, I didn't manage to catch it. We had an away game Saturday, so I managed to, overnight stay on Saturday, so I missed it all. Apart from like a couple of snaps here and there, I managed to catch, but nothing major.
Yeah, Sean, anything from your end, or?
Yeah, I'm similar. I haven't watched an awful lot of it. I think just a point on the pre-season in general, and it's obviously a shame that this kind of injuries happened. And I suppose you could look at it from two ways. You could get a type of injury like this on the training field. I think it's just a matter of time until the pre-season's a thing of the past in the NFL. To be honest, I think we're already hurtling towards an 18-game season, which will reduce the pre-season further. And it's almost becoming pointless, isn't it? Because it's no way a measuring stick. You look at the players that didn't play, and I don't really get what we're actually getting out of pre-season anymore. We're playing a load of guys that aren't going to end up on NFL rosters. The quality is awful. Let's be honest, it's absolutely awful. I'm not sure what we're getting out of pre-season, to be honest. I mean, for Luke Whipler, it's a devastating injury. He probably would have had a role to play on the line this year. Potentially would have been a bit of a swing lineman between centre and guard. I think obviously Nick Harris coming back is a good story. I think a lot of people, he went up in people's estimations last year in terms of being playing, a lot of out of position, playing at fullback a lot of the time. So obviously good to have him back. But obviously devastating news on the Whipler front. I'm sure we might talk a little bit more about Mike Hall. I think we've all got a pretty strong and pretty unanimous opinion on it. It's probably for me a
It's
bit of
been
a
proven to be true.
we'll caveat it with that. We will caveat it with that. But let's be honest, there's never genuinely smoke without fire.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
sounds pretty awful.
Mhm.
I know Owain wasn't keen on the pick when it was made. I could understand it, and I think, like you say, there's a bit of hyperbole sort of comparing him to Aaron Donald, but I think certainly that was his sort of forte, that pass rush ability, that sort of getting the pressure on the quarterback from the middle. You could understand why they'd go that way. For me, this though just continues a bit of a worrying trend in terms of the Browns organisation and some of these character issues that we're finding. If you just look at this as a position now, you've had, Michael this year. We had Perion Winfrey last year. We've had Malik McDowell in a previous year. 3 players in consecutive off seasons at that defensive tackle position, all that had questionable character traits coming in, and all that have ultimately, ended up having yet another indiscretion again, allegedly, in terms of Michael. So we'll wait and see what happens. But it
Christ,
seems
you're making me wonder whether or not it's a positional trait at this point.
Yeah, that might just be a really unhappy coincidence, but I think it's probably just a wider point in general, isn't it? I remember sort of a few years back. I mean, it probably started to change when John Dorsey took over, and a little bit more chance was taken on character, and certainly Andrew Berry seemingly continued that at one stage. The Britons just wouldn't take anybody with any character concerns.
Yeah.
But I don't know what you guys think, but for me, it's a little bit of a worrying trend that we keep seeing this with players, and the greatest ability is availability.
Yeah. Just before Owain chimes in, I think that your main issue is that we took the most public stand, in terms of glossing over potential personal issues. And I think that the only thing that stops us from taking a chance on these as an organization, at least externally, is, when police get involved. That seems to be the trend of which it goes into. And the one thing which I've seen online a lot, and it's concerning, it's very, very concerning, especially as a Browns fan, is, and it is other AFC North fans that chime in with this, but it is quite true. Fans just going, God, it's Cleveland again. Why always Cleveland? Why, and after a while, you do kind of. I mean, I know that it's other teams as well. I know other teams have this, and I know it's a trait of which it happens to. You hear about these. It probably affects 4 or 5 clubs a year, but it always seems to be that we're the ones in that list as well. And it's year on year on year, and it's almost always that it was a worrying trait anyway. It's not like it's new information. When you were what do you make of it, mate?
I think like Shaun, it is a worrying trend that is happening. I think, like you said, it is a coincidence when it comes to the position of the player. I think the Perion Winfrey one and the Mike Hall one are really similar in the fact that they spent I think was Perion maybe a 3rd round pick or maybe a 4th, either a 3rd or a 4th, and then Mike Hall being a 2nd round pick that have effectively burned, set on fire within both players within a year of them being a Brown, which in normal circumstances would be awful, but when you're working with such little draft capital as what we have in the last 2 years, it's amplified as well. And then yeah, I think the worrying trend for me is like the most important position in all of sports. And I don't really want to like have a massive conversation about it again, but because we've talked about it plenty of times. But if you're going to take a chance as big as what they did on the most important position in all of sports and give, someone who'd been in that much, difficulty with the law and, court proceedings and stuff like of that nature for something more so serious, if you're going to take a chance on that and then give him the highest contract in history in terms of guaranteed money and stuff, then what's a second round pick? What's a third round pick? And that's what it seems to be in this direction. Obviously, it's difficult for us to say when it comes to character concerns and how much of this stuff that they knew beforehand, whether any of this stuff has come on before, whether he's had any difficulty with domestic abuse or any sort of violence in his
Yeah.
past. It's impossible for us to say like sat you without knowing any of that evidence. But the stuff that has come out today is disgusting, really
Mhm.
disgusting. And I hope on a personal level he gets dealt with like he should. Whatever that looks like, whether he does jail time for it, because effectively the stuff with a gun deserves that type of stuff. So it's worrying on a Browns level, equally worrying because obviously setting a second round pick on fire when you had like, what do we have, 5 draft picks last year,
Yeah.
and 2 of them being late picks as well. So in terms of the youth coming through, especially as we seemingly pay everyone these days. So, that cap space and stuff is going to be getting slimmer and slimmer, and you need these high round draft picks to come in and play, meaningful snaps like straight away and in their rookie, on their rookie deal. So yeah, on that side of things it's worrying as well. But like I said, maybe this is just an unhappy coincidence. I think it happens, it happens everywhere across the league. So I think just because it's happened to us a few times in the last few years, I think it seems a bit more close to home, but it's definitely a league-wide problem.
Oh,
But it doesn't
absolutely. Of course it
take away
is.
from the fact that
You
it's
see
us
too
again.
much
Yeah.
of it nowadays.
Mm.
Yeah, you see way too much of it nowadays, for sure.
Yeah. I wonder how much of this is the fact that we're obviously a UK-based podcast, because as soon as we hear someone's pulled a gun out, because obviously the difference in culture in the countries, we instantly like, oh my God, it's... And I'm not trying to defend it. I think, again, we would all have a probably pretty unanimous collective view on it, but obviously trying to just sort of put a different head on it, try and separate the two issues. You still can't, condone the other elements of this in terms of the threatening behaviour and abuse and all the rest of it. I wonder how much the gun actually plays into it. And I know that sounds stupid for us to say, but like I say, we're a
Nah, mate, I
UK-based
was thinking the
podcast.
same thing.
I wonder whether it's something that, because we're just not culturally adverse to it, that maybe it's just viewed totally differently over there. Who knows? But yeah, not good, not a good look. And I think Owen's just nailed it. We say our second round pick. He was our first selection. We didn't have a
Yeah.
first round pick again. So, if you look at the sort of draft haul, if you want to call it that, it's slim pickings. So you wanted my call to really be the standout one, and yeah, could be over before it's begun.
Yeah. Right. I tell you what, let's move on to something a little happier, shall we? I think
Please.
we can say we started with the factory of sadness. Let's see how we pull ourselves out of that. One more thing until we start talking about key Browns questions and dive into the predictions and that. Last week now, it was a week ago today. The Haslam Sports Group announced plans to potentially relocate the Browns 17 miles down the road to Brook Park, with a state-of-the-art 67,500 seater stadium, of which would be a dome. It's actually more like a shed, like a glass shed, with its own resorts, selection of hotels, restaurants, all the rest of it. Basically regenerating the area in that part. It's right by Cleveland Hopkins Airport. It will be right on an RTA station. It's going to be a $2.5 billion facility. It's all the things which you want to hear about. And then since then, the Cuyahoga County has essentially said, we can't back this, play downtown please. So there's been all sorts of backwards and forwards and posturing between local politicians and the Haslam Sports Group and ultimately the Cleveland Browns in a battle to keep Cleveland in downtown. It's caused all sorts between fans that think it should stay downtown, those that want the future. But I'm going to keep it incredibly light because I think that it needs to be at this point. How boss do those renderings look for that Brook Park Stadium? Because if Cleveland ends up having that in 5 years' time, wow. I mean, I'm going to Cleveland this year, but I also then would want to go in 5 years' time. That looks ridiculous.
Yeah, I think
looked awesome.
it does. It does. Like Shaun was saying, it does look amazing. It's something I think as a podcast we've been generally agreeing upon for the last year or two. Whenever we've had conversations about it, I do find it hilarious because I have seen it from like non-Cleveland based fans that have been complaining about it. I find it baffling every time I see it because if this isn't affecting you financially, and you're not born and bred in Cleveland where it's cold and you really want to keep that sense of nostalgia, why on earth would you be moaning about this? Because all you do is watch the games on a screen, and surely you would want that to look better on a weekly basis than having to
Absolutely.
see Deshaun Watson throwing into 70-mile-an-hour winds and it hitting the ground within 3 yards of it being in the air. It
You
does
mean
make
you mean all these superstars that live in hot weather climates, having to play
precisely.
in a cold weather city?
We've said it for the longest time, haven't we? And regardless of where it's built, get a dome up as quickly as possible. We joke about it now, but I still, it's the most bizarre argument that we should have an advantage, and all this crap that we hear. It's just, I'm sorry, it's just, just get a dome. But we don't care where it is. We obviously aren't as invested in terms of that. So I do understand it for the people that are there. I think you've got to think about your own local sports team or whatever. Obviously, again, much smaller country, but if you think about moving Aston Villa 17 miles, then that'd be something that we'd probably moan about. So, I can understand it for the people that have got a real vested interest, but from a neutral and on this side of the pond, get it built. Looks incredible.
Absolutely. When you think about all the teams that play outside of their direct cities, and really, it's still in Greater Cleveland. It's not like it's in a different state like New York, or in an entirely different city like Dallas, who actually play in Arlington. We're talking very much still part of the area, and there's talks of potentially annexation to bring Brook Park into Greater Cleveland as well, so that the tax would remain with the city as well. So there's all sorts going into this. Just wanted to bring it up and just highlight it to anyone that's been living under a rock for the past couple of weeks, because it's definitely dominated the conversations as we prepare for the new season, and it's a decision that will probably need to be made probably by the end of this season, because the Browns would need to be playing in either a better facility in downtown or in Brook Park by September 2029. So that seems quite far away now, but when you consider that it may require building a massive new facility and forking over billions of dollars, we are not talking a lot of time at all. So stay tuned on that one. It's going to be interesting. I'll be freezing my butt off in November for Thursday night football, watching the Steelers in Cleveland, and I bet I'll be wishing for the dome then. I can promise you that. Louise will be anyway. She's already told me to order her plenty of blankets. Let's talk about the roster, shall we, chaps? The news over the last few weeks, the saga, shall we call it, is that Brandon Ayuk was apparently very high on the Browns' radar. Still technically could be on the radar in a potential swap deal with the 49ers to include Amari Cooper and a couple of picks. There's been all sorts of back and forth here. We're not going to go into it in any great detail. The one question I want to ask you is, when you look at the wide receiver core at the moment, and Shaun, I'll ask you this first. Do we need to upgrade to Brandon Ayuk at this moment in time? Is now the moment for that, or do we even need to do that?
For me, I wouldn't say we need to. I think it depends on your view on Amari Cooper. I mean, Amari Cooper's just turned 30. He's not, he's not past it by any stretch of the imagination. He had his best season last season, so he's still proving to be a very, very reliable receiver. I think overall, it's a room that we've said for a while needed some transformation. The Jerry Jeudy sort of acquisition at the start of the year. I think, again, that contract we said at the time was a bit of a gamble. And, it'll either work out as a shrewd bit of business or we'll look very foolish at the end of this 12 months. So we'll wait and see how that shapes out. But it's obviously quite telling that Cooper was only essentially sort of restructured and sort of given a pay rise for the 1 year, wasn't it? There wasn't a long-term commitment. So what I would say is I think any of this sort of, Cooper's been on Instagram and he's posted this cryptic tweet or whatever the case may be, this goes on in the NFL. Every single player is probably talked about by every single GM up and down the league, even if it's just a polite inquiry, just to say, what might it take? There's always a deal to be made, regardless of who you are and where you are, and the players aren't naive to that. And to be fair, if I was Amari Cooper and I got the chance at 30 years to go to San Francisco as opposed to Cleveland, you can understand him probably not sort of minding it too much. So I personally don't think Ayuk's a big enough upgrade for myself. I think he's another one similar to Jerry Jeudy. Could be really good. I'm not convinced he's elite level. But let's be honest, elite level receivers are very difficult to go and purchase. You have to draft them and you have to hit on them. And that's something that, again, we haven't done and we haven't had the capital to in recent years. But generally speaking, Tyreek Hill probably the exception. I can't really remember too many sort of real premier wide receivers that have ended up in a trade. So I'm not overly concerned that it hasn't gone through. I'll be quite happy if it's still Cooper as wide receiver one on the depth chart come the start of the season.
Astute there. Owain, anything on that? I know that we've been talking quite at length in terms of Ayuk over the last few days.
Yeah, to me, he is an upgrade, and the main thing about it is you're buying yourself pretty much like, 3 or 4 extra years. I think the risk with keeping Amari past this season is that you pay and then he hits the wall, which, for every player it comes at some point. You don't know when it's going to come, but when it does come, it comes pretty quickly. And I think that would be the risks paying him beyond this year. And I think that's why they haven't done so yet. So I can understand why they wanted Ayuk. Am I bothered that it hasn't happened? No, because immediately I don't think the room needs a lot of work doing to it right now. But in terms of the future, you look past this year, you still only got Jerry Jeudy, Cedric Tillman, David Bell, Jamari Thrash, and then Mike Woods or whatever. So I think beyond this year, I think it is a room that needs a lot of work, and it probably needs to get a bit younger as well, because you can't just you can't go and pay Elijah Moore and Amari Cooper and Jerry Jeudy and keep them all next year. You obviously want to see glimpses out of Tillman next year, that he can go on and do good things in his third year. And you're probably looking towards a draft as well if they don't make a move for a Brandon Ayuk, or if crazy things happen, a CeeDee Lamb. But yeah, I think it's good that they're looking, because it is such an important position in the NFL. Offense has been king for the last few years, so it's important to have a really good core of weapons. And yeah, it doesn't bother me that they're trying to upgrade there at all.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you too. You've always got to look and see as to how to improve the team. I think that the Browns have been quite proactive in that they're an organization that isn't scared about flashing the cash, and they're not scared about breaking some eggs in order to make the omelette. They're also not scared of throwing away draft picks in order to make that happen. So it makes sense that they would be, that they'd be in the conversation for this. I can see it from I can see it from the fact of trying to handle a situation before it becomes a situation. With Cooper being on a 1-year deal, it makes a lot of sense that the way that Andrew Berry operates, that he would be doing it in order to, see if he can use him in a trade to be able to bring someone younger in and be able to basically buy more years. The only surprise is the fact that it's something which we've gone to the well on quite a bit. So you're wondering as to, when's enough going to be enough when it comes to the wide receivers before you start wondering whether or not it's the wide receiver core. I wonder as to whether or not other positions are potentially more in need of some attention at the moment. And not that I actually plan to do this, but it actually brings me on very nicely to my next question to you both, of which is if there is a spot on the roster, like a position on the roster that feels a bit soft and needs addressing, what one would that be for you? Because I've been looking at, and obviously you see, you see them flash up in terms of like the rankings for positions within divisions and that sort of thing. I don't think we've been fourth for any of the positions with the AFC North, for even like other fans ones where they sort of like are quite biased against us, for example. Just wondering as to whether there are any spots. Don't say QB.
That is actually what popped into my head straight away.
I know. I saw the glint in your eye, and I thought I should shut that down before it becomes a thing. Knowing it's not going to be that, seeing as we currently have 3 backups to Deshaun Watson now.
I think for me, on paper, you'd probably say linebacker. I
Mhm,
think outside JOK, on paper, the linebacker core is pretty weak.
yeah.
I think in reality, it may be offensive line, and I say that because on paper, we've got a very, very good offensive line. We obviously pay them
But we
really
don't have depth.
handsomely. But in terms of pass protection and what they did last year, that group needs to be a hell of a lot better this year. Am I confident that they will get better? Yeah, because I think they're a really good bunch of players. But I think the Browns need to see more for their money next year. So that's what I'll go.
Yeah, I think
Nice.
for me, I'd agree on paper. Linebacker is the one from a defensive point of view that stands out as the sort of real concern. I do think as well. I don't want to go back over the Mike Hall stuff, but I think that defensive tackle spot is another one. You've got a lot of veterans on there. Shelby Harris, Maurice Hurst have had durability issues. They're all of a sudden back at sort of being second, third, maybe third and fourth on that depth chart. Michael would have been expected to have played a fair rotation of snaps. So that's another position that I think you would look at as just as the season wears on. We saw that a little bit last year, didn't we? Quite dominant at home, struggled away. You want that group to sort of maintain that freshness and have that good rotation. So you can never have enough quality pass rushers. That's what they always say, isn't it? So I'd probably say the defensive side is the one on the weaker side of it from a paper standpoint. I think the outline depends so much on how players come back from injury, doesn't it? Is Jedrick Wills going to come back and look decent? Does Jack Conklin come back and start, or is Jack Conklin like the sixth lineman that potentially swings either side and DeJuan Jones starts? Joel Batonio, a lot of people started questioning last year. Was he starting to fall away? I think there's so much of last year can be excused to an extent. I mean, some weeks we didn't even know what combination of 5 guys were going to go out there. They were sort of signing a player on Wednesday and he was starting on Sunday. So I think a lot of excuses can be made for that group last year. But I agree. You're going to want to see some consistency there. They surely can't be as unlucky again with injuries. Surely.
I'm just going to knock on wood, just because they can. They have been that unlucky, and they can definitely be that unlucky again. The other position that I was going to mention, But I initially thought of this question a couple of days ago, but my answer has been partially satiated by something that MKC has said in the last day or two. Running back was going to be mine because I don't see much outside of Nick Chubb. Still, I think that they're still trying to make Jerome Ford work. I know that comparing him to Nick Chubb doesn't help because how can you compare him to the best running back in the league? And be able to do anything really apart from moan. But there is such a massive drop off. But MKC has said that they expect that they expect Nick Chubb to be activated off the PUP list anytime soon during training camp, so within the next couple of weeks, and that he is expected to be ready to start within the first 3 weeks of the season. So we could be seeing Nick Chubb back, as early as technically that could mean as early as Dallas, but as late as the Giants in week 3. All things going well. Maybe it'll be a case of shared reps for a while they bring him back up to speed. But that has definitely satiated some running back concerns for me. Because I feel like that was somewhere where on the off, we're a running first team, and we kept trying to do that with Jerome Ford. We kept trying to do it. Kareem Hunt, who hasn't come back, obviously this year, and neither of those were really able to allow us to have that dual threat going forward. Deshaun Watson obviously not being there as well meant that there was practically nothing coming from that either, because Joe Flacco is not exactly the kind of guy that was going to tear off for 10, 15 yards down the field, apart from that one surprising play when you're thinking, no, Joe, think of your brittle bones. So really glad to see that he's coming back. I think that we all shed a tear that Monday Night Football. It was a Monday Night Football game, that's right. When he went down, it looks like he's coming back and he's just as strong as he ever was, as we've seen in those videos, of which I then look at that and think, no, Nick, you're brittle bones, but they are definitely not brittle. A man that can lift that kind of weight is definitely not brittle. So yeah, good times ahead by the looks of it, of which is pretty good. So let's jump into some predictions, lads. Let's get into the fun part of the pod. I haven't gone through last year's predictions pod because I'm just ready to give the belt to Owain, because I'm pretty sure that he ended up with probably about a 60% hit rate from just going off memory. And I think if I listen back to the predictions pod, it's just going to hurt me mentally. So I'm just going to give him the dub, and we're going to move forward. What we're going to do, chaps, I'm going to read out certain stints of our season in chronological order. I've kind of put them into little stints. You tell me what our record will be in those little stints, right? So 3 games at the start: home to Dallas, away to the Jags, home to the Giants. I've got that as a 2-1.
Yeah, I'll go the same. I'll go 2-1. Dallas and the Giants being the 2.
Yep, the home ones for me. Sean?
I'm going to go 3-0. You've obviously both forgotten how shite Jacksonville were at the back end of last year. I don't think they won a game in the last 7, did they, or something stupid?
And yet that would be exactly the kind of game that Deshaun Watson forgets to know what throwing is. Then we've got a 3-game home trip. A 3-game road trip, even. Vegas, Washington, Philadelphia. I've got that as 2-1.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'd say 2-1.
Yeah, I'll go 2-1. And I think the reason why they beat Washington is because Daniels is a rookie, and I think the defense will win us that game.
No, see, Washington was one of which I wasn't concerned about at all. I was just fully on Philly being the game where we fall down on that one. But interesting to hear you say that. I think that Washington are still a couple of years out from being any kind of threat.
I think they've got some
Philly-
nice pieces still.
Yeah, Philly's an interesting one as well, isn't it? Because again,
Hmm.
they're another team the back end of last year that completely fell away.
Oh yeah,
You know,
I
you'd
watched them
still
in New
expect,
York and they were horrible. They were
yeah,
terrible.
you'd still expect them to sort of be there or thereabouts just because of the amount of star power that's on the roster. But something went seriously wrong at the back end of last season. Just looking at it now, they actually lost 5 of the last 6 games. So something went seriously wrong at the back end there.
Yeah, and it wasn't necessarily injuries, I don't think, either, which is interesting. So that does tell you a story. But yeah, I think I think that 2-1's fair there. Right, just before the bye, got a 3-game homestand: Bengals, Ravens, Chargers. I've got that as 2-1.
Yeah, I'll go 2-1. I think that's, like you say, to win all 3 of those back to back is going to be tough. So yeah, I'll go 2-1.
Yeah, I'll go 2-1 as well.
Owain really struggled with that one then.
Yeah,
We
I was
wanted
tempted
to
to
be
go 3-0
Yeah, which one do you guys think will fall on that one? I've said the Ravens. Ravens at home, we never
Ravens
seem to
or
do all that
Bengals.
well.
It's one of those, isn't it? I mean, again, who knows what you're going to get with the Chargers? I mean, obviously Harbaugh, it could be a totally different animal altogether, couldn't it? Historically the Chargers haven't travelled great, but again, who knows?
Then again, he's not going to be able to steal signals and scout over the top of training facility benches or anything like that. So
Very true.
As much as I love Herbert, I just don't see him having enough weapons to
Yeah, that's the only thing. Yeah, that is the only
worry
thing.
teams.
yeah, right. I've labelled it. So we've come out the bye now. Week 10's the bye. I've got 2 more because I've kind of grouped them in a specific way. This is a 4-game stint I've called Gotta Have 'em, just because we've got a tough finish stint afterwards. So Saints away, Pittsburgh at home, Denver away, and then Pittsburgh away. And I've got that as 3-1.
4-0.
I'd be happy to go. 4-0. I was just about to say I'd be happy to go 2-2 there.
Okay, I like this. It's a variation. It's the first time that we've not actually stood. So I'm typing these as we go because this year I've got you, Owain. I'm gonna have it already written down so I don't have to go back to this recording and listen to me botch it. I can just read it instead.
I think just on the anomaly of that schedule as well, mate. I don't know if you've noticed it the way that it's come out, because I was looking at this earlier when you sent the rundown through, and we come back off that bye week at the Saints. We then got a short week because we're then the Thursday night football, which you're obviously going to.
Yeah,
It's almost then like an extended mini bye week because we don't actually then play until the following week's Monday night football,
yeah,
which is
it's
the
nice,
Denver
isn't
one.
it?
So we have got like a sort of 10-day break again there. The only concern for me is you're going across to Denver, cross country, Monday night, and then you're going across to Pittsburgh. That's why, like I say, for me, I think that if we can come out of that 2-2, bear in mind at the minute, I think I've got us probably winning 10 of the first 12 or something stupid, knowing me anyway.
Let's see.
We'd
What
almost
have
have
you got?
the playoffs secured.
You are currently at 9-4.
There we go. I'll take that.
Yeah, there you go. You're currently at 9-4. I think what's a wine currently on? So 4, 6, 8, 10, and 3. Yeah, yeah, and I think I'm at 9-4 as well. Yeah.
Sean's doing much more research than me. He's looking at what days we're playing on. I'm just going off who feels.
Yeah, but
That's normally
Owain,
what gets me.
I was going to say
you're.
I was going to say you're pure vibes, and yet it still comes out on top. So I'm not listening to excuses. Vibes usually carries you. Right, a tough finish. Kansas at home, Cincinnati away, Miami at home, Baltimore away. Cheers, schedule writers. Appreciate that. didn't want to win in December anyway.
Say this every year, though. You've got no idea. That could be the easiest finish in the world. Doesn't
It
look like
could.
it now, but it could be. I'm gonna go a strong finish. I'm gonna go 3-1 to finish.
I'm gonna flip it. I'm gonna go 1-3.
And that is exactly what I'm doing. You're a madman, Shaun. What on earth? That's wild. Oh, so that has put. So I'm on 10 and 7, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
I think
7.
that puts me 11 and 6.
1 second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yep. So I'm on 10 and 7. Wine's on 11 and 6. Shaun is on 12 and 5 by the looks of it.
It's normally how it goes, to be fair. Shaun's normally the most optimistic.
This is true. I didn't expect me to be the most pessimistic, though. I'm usually the one that sort of keeps you guys separated. Can't really do
All I will say, guys, right? We've all gone for a winning record and a fairly comfortable winning record, which, let's not underestimate. That is progress from where we've been for most of our fandom of the Cleveland Browns. The other thing is,
this is compared to 2 years ago, 3 years ago. 2 years ago since when we started this, obviously being year 3. Happy birthday to us. We were talking 8, 9 wins and being
would be
like
chuffed
over the
with.
moon. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think the only thing I would say is, I think we talked when we sort of ended last season and said what we seem to every year, really important off season, they've got to do X, Y, and Z. I'm basing this predominantly on the fact that we're just going to get so many of these injured players back, because I think if you look at the actual improvements, if you want to call it that, in the roster, it's fairly minimal across the piece in terms of what's actually being done. They've added Jerry Jeudy, who should have an impact. But outside of that, you tell me what we've added in terms of impact pieces. So much of this is a reliance on the fact that we were so competitive with all of the issues last year that if we could just have a bit more luck on the injury front, for me,
Oh,
and
I know. It's
ultimately,
that strength for schedule, though. We've got the toughest schedule out of everyone. Again, somehow.
load of bollocks. Don't worry about it.
But I do worry about it because it's not bollocks, and it turns true that it's not bollocks.
It is utter bollocks. Nobody
I
knows what
appreciate it.
anybody's going to do this year. Nobody knows what anybody's going to do this year.
I'm pretty sure that 5 seconds has meant I'm going to have to put an explicit tag on Spotify for this. But no, fair play. So I think that we've all got into the playoffs on this one. Owain, so Shaun at 12 and 5. I'm assuming that puts you as winning the AFC North.
All joking aside, I think it's about time. I genuinely do think it's about time. I think, ultimately that has got to be I wouldn't say the number one aim, because ultimately it's about getting into the playoffs. And once you've got a ticket, then anything can happen. If you said to me now you can win the division and go out first round, or you sort of advance further, then we're all going to go further in the postseason, aren't we? But I do think it would be almost symbolic for them to actually finally get over that hurdle and actually win the division. So for me, I think 12 and 5 would get the division won.
Yeah, Owain at 11 and 6. Do you see us getting pipped?
No, I agree with Shaun. I think we'll win the division this year. I think on paper, I think you look at roster building and all of that stuff, and I think you can poke holes in all the other 3. And I think it is about time. The only thing for me stopping us from winning the division is the fact that we've not won it in so long, and it's a culture thing with the other 3 that they know how to do it, and we need to find a way to know how to do it. And I think this could be the year.
Fair enough. So 10 and 7 won't get the job done for me. 12 and 5, definitely. 11 and 6, borderline. 10 and 7 won't do it for me. So I'm looking at a second or third, probably with Cincinnati, sort of playing in that. I do think that the Ravens are still a very, very good-looking organization in terms of their roster. Lamar Jackson actually looks like he's improved. Over the last few years, I was staunchly a critic. Thinking that his style was not conducive to being able to throw. All the rest of it been proved very, very wrong over the last couple of years. They just bottle the playoffs, which is quite delicious. So we're all in the playoffs by the looks of it. Where would you see us come out? Or are we just basically saying that's a come to it when we come to it? Or do you want to give yourselves a punt as to where you would see us eventually ending up? Is that too risky to your reputation, Mr. Jones?
No, I say pretty much every year, just make the playoffs and then the lottery happens then. And I think that's what I'll keep saying. Like, if we make the playoffs every year, then I'm a happy man, because I think that the teams that go on and win it or go on and do well in it for the most part aren't maybe the best teams every year. They're just ones that catch fire at the right time. And I think you just give yourself that ticket in the playoffs and see what sort of wave you catch. So I'll never say, oh, we're going to go out in the second round of the playoffs or whatever. I just say make the playoffs and then go from there.
Fair. Shaun, I'm assuming that you're going to plead the fifth as well.
No, I'm going to say Super Bowl, mate.
Of course you are.
I'm going to say Super Bowl. I'm going to keep saying it until it eventually happens. It's got to happen one day, surely. So why not this year? Why not this year?
Fair enough. I am going to say one win in the playoffs and then not say anything further. I'm just going to allow it to play out from the divisional round onwards.
I think all joking aside, it's not a question for today. It's probably one we can sort of discuss on future podcasts. But we're almost getting to the stage though of when does that become a problem? When does actually just making the playoffs not become acceptable? We've just talked about the fact that we've all predicted a sort of fairly substantial winning record. But it's not for today. We're already 51 minutes in. But I think it's just one of those questions, isn't it, that eventually it comes up. I mean, you ask Pittsburgh, some of them want to get rid of Mike Tomlin. We look at it and think, well, why would you want to do that? But in reality, they haven't won a Super Bowl now for how long? So ultimately, it is going to start to become an issue until they can get over that hump and not just make the playoffs, but progress through them and, like I say, start winning divisions regularly.
Yes, and then we truly will be the bourgeoisie in amongst the proletariat, won't we? Because to have gone from just crying over winning one game in the last 34 to having those kind of questions, that's quite that's quite the concept there. Right, does anyone want to throw out a prediction? Owain's already given me a smile here. It can be anything. I'm going to be quite vague here. Just whether it's a certain side of the ball that you think is going to do something, or a particular player. What something which you're looking forward to seeing? Just something Browns related that you're putting a prediction on. Mr. Jones, I'll take your first.
I've gone too early.
I've
gone too early. I thought you were asking me for my bold NFL take of the year, which
Christ, no.
Track record of a long odds.
I mean, we can do that first. We can do that first if you want. Go on.
I'm ready for my long odds bet of the year.
Please.
I'm gonna go the Buffalo Bills to miss the playoffs with a losing record this year. That's my hot take of the season.
Wow, that is quite the hot take. I am definitely jotting that down and then finding odds for it so I can join the bandwagon. Shaun, any long odds for you in terms of the NFL, seeing as we are taking this time out from talking about the Browns?
I hadn't really delved into it all that far, if I'm honest, but now you've put me on the spot. I'm going to go for the Houston Texans, everybody's darlings, to also not make the playoffs this year.
Nice.
Stole that from me, I swear.
So I'm asking you this question in rebuttal to that, Shaun. So they don't make the playoffs. So you've already confessed that you think the Jags stink. So that would mean that either the Colts
it's Titans time, baby.
Division there.
I think there's a good chance that division ends up like last year's. Was it the NFC South that had a team win it with a losing record? I think that conceivably could be that kind of division next year. I think everybody just expects the Texans to kick on, and look, there's every chance that they might, but I just think that ultimately, I think there's an awful lot of pressure. Second seasons are always notoriously difficult to sort of repeat the success that you've had in your rookie season, and I would include Tank Dell in that as well as the quarterback, in terms of, that connection that they had. So I just wouldn't be surprised, mate. I think it's the kind of division where historically they all seem to take wins off each other in terms of inter-division play. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see that as a division that ends up with a losing record for the winning side.
Do you know, I think the Jags are just going to do it. Personally, I think that people are writing them off too quickly, and they are not necessarily too far off what people were giving them darling status for a couple of years back. So, maybe with a couple of years of grit under their belt, they're able to get something moving. That's my personal opinion, but it's definitely one there. For me, one of the big stories. Again, it's another darling falling from grace, but for me, it's Packers. There's so much love for the Packers off, what was a late season push last year. They won't win the division because the Lions will consolidate that, in my opinion. And I think the NFC is getting more difficult. I think that it's getting more competitive. And I do wonder whether or not the Packers have enough to be able to stand out in that. The only division that I don't think is competitive is the NFC South still. But the Packers' only reprieve is the fact that
who to win that. Sorry,
what's that? Sorry, who do I expect to win the NFC South?
Yeah,
Was that? I still think the Bucks for that one. The Falcons have improved, but I don't think enough. The Bucks are still a better roster on paper, I think, and they haven't had too many ingoings or outgoings. It's been able to keep its pieces. The Falcons, I think, will end up having a too much change going on with that one. The Packers' only reprieve, I think, is the fact that they'll get 2 wins off the Vikings now because Sam Darnold's going to be throwing the ball. Yeah, at least for the first half of the season, by the looks of it. For anyone that doesn't know, JJ McCarthy got injured. I assume it was during their preseason game. I just heard that he's apparently having knee surgery to find out how long the knee is going to put him out for. And I've heard reports it will either be 4 to 6 weeks or 4 to 6 months. No pressure. It's not like there's a massive disparity between those.
And I know exactly how that goes because I've had 3 of the exact same surgery, so I know exactly why that difference is so vast. And I would imagine it's more common that it ends up 4 to 6 weeks than what it does the 4 to 6 months.
Yeah, is it? I think I remember seeing something. It's a case of it's either ligament damage or I can't remember what the other kind of tear was, but it's looking to see where.
Effectively, he's torn his meniscus, and the difference between the timescales is if they just cut out the tear, which is the most common thing to do, then that'll just be 4 to 6 weeks. Effectively, the thing's healed straight away. You just have to wait for the stitching, the swelling, all that to go down. If they stitch the tear back together, then because of blood flow issues and stuff like that, it takes a lot longer to heal. Hence why 4 to 6 months would be the difference.
So in that case, let's take Dr. Jones's advice and say it's 4 to 6 weeks. There's hope for the Vikings to at least be competitive from October onwards. Which will help the Packers. Which is why I'm not saying that they will miss the playoffs, but I definitely don't. I don't think they'll win a playoff game. That's probably a good way to go there. It's not exactly a wild take, but it's definitely one against the darlings, of which I feel like there are too many of nowadays. I feel like the NFL tries to promote at least 3 darlings a year, of which is tiring as a team that surely should have had darling status, but because of everything that went down, will never achieve it. Not that I'm bitter. So let's roll back to the Browns for one more question, and then we'll end on a Super Bowl prediction note, shall we? One prediction about the Browns, whether it's an offense, defense, special teams fortunes, or a standout player, or just something which you're looking forward to seeing playing out. What's one thing of which you've got for the Browns for this upcoming season?
I'm going to go. I'll give you a couple. So, prediction for me is Myles Garrett breaks the sack record this season.
I feel like you've said that for the last 3 years.
Again, it'll happen eventually, so I'll keep saying it until it does. Nick Chubb will lead the team in touchdowns.
Interesting.
And Cade York will kick a game-winning field goal at some point this year.
Oh, I like
Now,
that one.
That's a take. That's a take. I enjoyed the fact that they let Cade York take all the kicks on Saturday as well. I thought that was a class move.
Did he miss it?
No, he was flawless.
I just think it's interesting that they've brought him back. I mean, obviously, look, they've extended Hopkins. I'm not trying to create a drama that doesn't exist, but I think they're desperately going to try and find a way, if they can, to keep him around.
Do you reckon they're going to practice squad it?
Well, I don't know. I don't know whether these new kickoff rules will play an element into it or what, whether you're almost going to end up with a specialist. I've often said for the longest time, are you almost better to have an actual true specialist in reserve as opposed to
in that case, not Cade York.
Yeah,
in that case, definitely not Cade York, because my God, every kick he made was practically over the flipping goal line, whether or not that was intentional or not. So they couldn't play a kickoff return routine or not. I don't know, but yeah, if that is the play, please not him. But no, that was interesting. I like that one. So that one's going in the notes for sure. Absolutely. Owain, any from you?
I'll go with two. I'll go Denzel Ward to be an All-Pro this year.
Mm-hmm.
That's one. And then I want to go Jerry Jeudy to top 1,000 yards. Which the only thing that gives me a little bit of pause is the amount of competition he's going to have for targets. Obviously, you've got Njoku, Coop, Elijah Moore will get a few. But yeah, I think Jerry Jeudy's a lot better than what people give him credit for. I think a lot of the issues that he's had stem from either injury or horrendous QB play. So I think he's going to be really good for the Browns as long as he stays healthy.
So I'm looking at the Chubb most TDs thing. I don't hate it, but by the same token, I'm unsure as to what that would constitute. But I think that I could definitely state my claim. Comeback Player of the Year is almost written for Aaron Rodgers right now, but I don't think the Jets will do all that well. And I wonder if Chubb does come back in like week 2, week 3, and absolutely goes on a revenge tour, which would be so Nick Chubb, for Nick Chubb to win Comeback Player of the Year. I think that is definitely an arc, for a guy whose leg was literally bent backwards.
I think Chubb starts week 1, mate. I've said this since he posted that video of him bench pressing all that 500 odd pounds or whatever it was, and I know it's the cuts that are more of an issue in terms of the knee as opposed to the strength of sort of being able to bench press what he could. But yeah, for me, I think he starts week 1.
So for anyone looking to place a bet, Nick Chubb is 5th favourite at the moment.
5th? Who's the 4 above?
So Aaron Rodgers obviously favourite, like you said.
Yeah.
Joe Burrow 2nd, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Anthony Richardson 3rd.
Yeah, I can see that.
Kirk Cousins 4th.
Okay. So he's the first non-QB essentially.
Yeah, and then there's 3 QBs after, and they're in a really, really strange order. So if you can name me those 3, I'd be really impressed in order.
I couldn't give you the QBs, mate, let alone what the position players would be.
Shaun, do you want to have a go?
QBs that I'm trying to think of QBs that were injured.
So one of them's really obvious.
Daniel Jones.
Daniel Jones is one of the 3. So
he's probably the bottom.
No, he's actually not, which is why I said it was an interesting order.
Ooh, okay.
So one of them's super obvious.
Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, okay. He's the first one out of the 3.
So Shaun Watson, Daniel Jones. And it's a strange order, so it would be.
I'll give you a clue. I'll give you a clue. This quarterback didn't finish last season injured. But he'll be a comeback player of the year because he missed
Kyler Murray.
There we go. I thought that's an interesting order, though, that Daniel Jones isn't bottom of that list.
I forgot Kyler Murray existed, to be honest.
It's one of those weird awards, isn't it? There surely needs to be some sort of criteria that you have to have missed a certain amount of time or something, because it's just ridiculous. Mind you, let's not forget Joe Flacco won the damn thing last year for playing 3 games at the back end of the season, didn't he? So,
last trivia question for you. There's only 2 non-QBs in the top top 12, but at least top 10. Nick Chubb being one. And I'll hazard a guess of the other one.
What is this? Sorry, is this comeback player?
Comeback player. So to round out the top 12, you've got somebody after Kyler. We have the second non-QB, and then you've got Sam Darnold and Gardner Minshew, and then Justin Herbert after that, which makes no sense.
Weird. That's a weird one.
Offense or defense?
Offense, yeah. First non-offensive player is TJ Watt, which comes after Gardner Minshew.
See, I was going to say TJ Watt. Was going to be in there.
See, the only one that springs to mind, but I don't know because whether he's going to get any touches of the ball, J.K. Dobbins.
No, he's been mentioned on this pod already, which will be the clue that I give.
Oh, Tank Dell.
Oh, Shaun's on fire.
You can tell how much I'm keeping an eye on the schedule and stuff rather than retaining a lot of the information that gets said, can't you? Bless you, Shaun.
What's the odds on Nick Chubb, mate?
The odds on Nick Chubb are hard to understand from what they're doing, but I believe.
Take your betting advice from the Believe and Brits podcast. There you go.
Well,
I'm sorry. Is it written in like an odd point system or something?
No,
you have to read decimal dots.
It's 12-1, I think.
12-1.
Oh, what are you in the decimal system? Is it 13? Is it?
No, it's not. It's just like the top 4 are in fraction form, and then they get rid of that fraction form and go just to numbers.
So, yeah, so it will be that.
I
then.
think
So,
it is
if it's 12,
then
it's 12-1. Yeah.
12-1.
A little bit of betting knowledge for anyone that didn't know that. If giving you just a straight number, that is 2-1. Right, chaps. I reckon that we should probably end it there. I think we're starting to delve towards a bit of madness and a bit of barking mad. So we'll end it there this time around. I think that's covered pretty much everything there because we did talk about the AFC North as well. Didn't talk about Pittsburgh at all today, actually, which is interesting. It must be an indication as to how much we don't necessarily have them on our radar, for better or for worse. Knock, knock. Yeah, so we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for everyone for joining us. We're incredibly happy to be back. We will, our next pod will be probably in a couple of weeks. Shaun's heading off to America between now and the season starts, so we won't hear from him until the season has kicked off. keep your eyes peeled on the Believe in Brit Facebook page and X, as it's now called, handle for information around a potential meetup for week 1. 14 Yards are doing a kickoff party once again at Box Brindley Place in Birmingham, where hopefully the Cowboys and the Browns will be airing. So just keep your eyes peeled on that. I imagine it will probably be on Sky, so it should be a foregone conclusion. But I don't speak for Sky, but seeing as it's Tom Brady's first commentary game as well, you'd imagine it definitely would be. Owain and I will no doubt be previewing that game in any case beforehand. So we'll be back in a week or two. Keep it on the handles. We'll let you know in advance, and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever it is of which you're listening or watching us from. Trust me, all of it helps. Owain, Shaun, thank you very much, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you guys again after so long. And that is the Believe in Brits podcast.